Okay.
Hello, everyone. Hopefully our audio is working this time. Welcome again to our Part 2 housing panel. Off camera, I'm Gabriella. I'm a second-year Public Health Administration and Policy student, and I'll be moderating our housing panel with our three ambassadors here who will now introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Kaila. I'm a second year in the Public Health Nutrition Coordinated Master's Program.
Hi, I'm Kathryn. I'm a second year in the Community Health Promotion Program.
Hi, I'm Sundal. I'm a first year and I'm in Public Health Administration and Policy.
Great, thank you. So if we could just start off by sharing where you currently live in Minneapolis or St. Paul and talk about how long you've lived there.
So I live in St. Paul in the Summit University neighborhood, and I've lived there for almost 2 years. It'll be 2 years in September, but I guess I'm moving soon anyway. So like a year and a half. And I used to live in Madison, Wisconsin, and around the state of Wisconsin and St. Louis, Missouri.
I currently live, I think just barely at the border between Marcy Homes and Northeast. So I like to say I'm deep in Marcy Homes, kind of farther away from campus, and then shallow Northeast. I have lived there for about a year and a half to 2 years or so. And I'm originally from the Chicagoland area, but moved here from Iowa City.
So I live on the intersection of Como, Marcy Homes, and Dinkytown, which is kind of really convenient. So I like to say I'm from all three of those areas. I've been living there since September, and I used to live in Chicago on the north side.
Great. So maybe now you can each tell us a little bit more about how you chose your neighborhood.
Okay, so I'll start. When I was looking at St. Paul, not Minneapolis, because my best friend from college lives in St. Paul, so I wanted to be closer to her, but I also wanted to be close to the light rail. This was really important so that way I could get to campus easily, because I knew that I wouldn't want to be driving here and parking here every day because that's kind of expensive. So I was looking into that, just places that I could walk to the light rail from, and it was a little bit difficult to find places when I was looking originally in May because I wanted to move in August or September. So I found that landlords typically didn't have their availability until a little bit closer to the time I wanted to move. And then when I ended up talking with someone that I met from Minnesota, found out that her and her husband just bought a house that was a fourplex, and they had a 2-bedroom apartment open. So I was able to rent from them, and it was really great because it was close to the light rail and also close to Grand Avenue, where there's a lot of different coffee shops, clothing stores, restaurants, things like that, where I could easily walk to that or walk to the light rail. There's plenty of places for outdoor exercise. So it was everything I was looking for, and it was just really great that I was able to rent from somebody who is in the same program as me.
Yeah, so I moved here in August of 2015. I probably started looking for housing around May, but really didn't have a problem finding anything because most leases in this area kind of started around the August time. But something that was really important to me was I wanted to live in kind of a neighborhood that was still kind of had a bit of a student feel, but wasn't right kind of on campus with a lot of undergrad students. So my neighborhood definitely has, I'd say it's probably like half residential family, half graduate students, which I think is a really nice combination. I just really wanted to be in an area, kind of like Kaila said, that where you can be outside, which I think includes a lot of neighborhoods in Minneapolis. So I live just a couple blocks away from the Mississippi, where there are a bunch of really great walking, biking, running trails. The Stone Arch Bridge is right there, which has a really great view of the skyline. And I think there's still a lot of really great bars, restaurants, breweries in the area. And it, like, similarly to Kaila, it's still really close to public transportation. So there are several buses that go through my neighborhood that can take me right to campus. And it's also only about, I would say, a 30 to 35-minute walk. So when the weather's nice, I like to do that.
So I met my roommate through Y, Minnesota, and she contacted me in April, and we started looking in April for places. And we landed on our place pretty quickly. Yeah, I think what we were looking for was somewhere where it was walkable. So it's about like a 20-minute walk, which I kind of do every day. Or there's the 2 bus that is just like down the block and around the corner. And that'll take you right towards Mayo and drop you off. Yeah, I think we were also looking for some place that wasn't too undergrad focused. There are some grad students, but there are like a lot of undergrads that live in this area. But there's also families, and it's I think we kind of live in similar places. But I'm like a mile away from the Stone Arch Bridge, which is really nice. You can walk down it and be in downtown, and it's really beautiful in the summer and the winter.
Okay, so were there any other factors that you guys considered when you were looking for a place?
I think something that was really important to me was I wanted to make sure that I was still kind of living in an area where other MPH students might be. So I spent a lot of time on the incoming students Facebook page to see where other people were posting about living, just so I would kind of be in a similar neighborhood. But I think, honestly, I think we're kind of spread out all over the place, so that wasn't a huge problem. But that was something that was really helpful, was looking at that Facebook page.
For me, cost was a really big factor in trying to decide where to live. You can get really, really nice apartments in downtown Minneapolis and downtown St. Paul that are like brand new. And you can get apartments right on campus that are almost brand new, but those are really expensive. And so I kind of, weighed the cons and the pros of living a little farther away and paying less versus living right on campus. And for me, it was definitely more doable to pay a little bit less in rent and have a little bit of a longer commute. And I mean, my apartment is still great, even though it's not brand new.
I think price also played a factor in my decision. We were going to live closer to campus, but it does get very expensive once you get to the Dinkytown area. Also, parking was a big concern for me because I brought my car, so I wanted to make sure that I had a place to park it, and it was underground, and so the winter didn't get to it too bad.
Parking for me is free, actually. I think maybe because I live in more of a residential area and it's not like apartment complexes. And something that I really like is that they only have move your car during a snow emergency, and they text you, like the city texts you to tell you, okay, there's a snow emergency. Where I used to live, you had to move your car every night from November through April, and that was such a pain. So I'm really grateful that St. Paul, at least, and I think probably Minneapolis, has very specific days when there's a snow emergency. You have to move your car so they can plow, and you don't have to do it every night.
Yeah, going off of that, even if parking isn't free for you, so parking is free for me as well, but we only get one spot per unit, and my roommate and I both have cars. So we'll switch off. One of us will park in the lot and one of us will park on the street. But street parking is never an issue in my neighborhood. I would say in neighborhoods like Uptown, it's definitely a little more difficult. It's just a little more crowded there because I think parking is more expensive, so more people park on the street. So even if parking isn't free at the property that you're looking at, look into how available street parking is, because like Kaila said, that is probably a really good alternative, because there are a lot of neighborhoods where that's definitely more available.
Was safety a concern at all for you when you were looking at neighborhoods? Did you guys already talk about that?
Well, I moved from Chicago and specifically the Rogers Park area, which is a bit higher in crime. So Minneapolis has always seemed pretty safe to me in comparison. So that really wasn't on my radar, but my roommate who lived in rural California, that was a big concern for her, especially moving to a metro area. I think the point is that Minneapolis and St. Paul are cities, and there's always going to be crime. I'm not going to say that you're never going to experience or hear about it, but I think staying vigilant and just taking proper precautions is always safe.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't think I really thought about safety because I wasn't too concerned moving here, just because I know in comparison to some other big cities, it tends to be a little bit better. But, like you were saying, just be smart about what you do and you'll be okay.
Yeah, I think safety is a concern of everyone's. I definitely looked into that when I was looking at the neighborhood that I was going to live in. And I will put a little plug in for public transportation. I think Minneapolis has one of the best public transit systems in any of the places that I've lived. And I think that is really safe as well. And I know people have probably talked about it in the first housing panel, but I'll say it again. Through the school, you can get an unlimited public transit pass for $100 per semester, which pays for itself in a couple weeks. I use mine all the time. I would highly, highly recommend it. And yeah, I think that has definitely made me feel safer just taking the bus home at night instead of walking, et cetera.
Yeah, and like I mentioned before, I take the light rail every day, and that's amazing. I actually, this semester, only have class on campus one day a week, so I considered not getting the U-Pass this semester and just getting like the regular transit pass. And I went, I calculated it out, and it was still worth it for me to get the U-Pass because, there's going to be random times where I'd have to be on campus twice a week or something. And so even if you're like, well, I won't be on campus that often, it's still totally worth it because you'll likely be traveling during rush hour. The cost will go up during rush hour. It's really nice on the weekends if you want to go to downtown, either spot. You can always have that as a safe way to get around. Yeah, that's been probably one of my favorite things. I don't know what I would do without the light rail.
Yeah, I would recommend taking public transit, biking, or walking to campus as much as possible. You can drive, but I have spent an embarrassingly amount of money on parking here. It's not that cheap. And I mean, there's one lot that for $4 a day, you can park there all day. But that definitely adds up. So there are definitely options, but they add up.
And the $4 a day lot fills up so quickly in the morning that it's not likely that you'll get a spot.
And if you're trying to get here during rush hour times, it's going to take you just as long as it would as if you were doing public transit.
Yeah.
Doesn't really save you time.
Yeah. So something else that we can talk about is biking. I think Minneapolis is either number 1 or 2 in the country for biking. And so there are a lot of really great resources for that. Bike shops everywhere. The Greenway, which I don't think we've talked about during this yet, is a converted railroad that goes through most of the city. And so it's only for bikers or pedestrians. And so that's a really great option to get around. And then most of the streets here have specific bike lanes. And a lot of them more recently have started putting barriers up between the car lanes and the bike lanes to make them even safer. But I would say drivers here are really well aware of bikers. I think driving around here has definitely made me a better driver in general, just being more aware of bikers. Just wear a helmet.
Yeah, I've only biked from St. Paul once, probably just because I'm too lazy to do it, but it was really nice. It was a nice ride. over here, and I know people who do that a lot more frequently than I do. But we don't have the Greenway in St. Paul that I'm aware of, or maybe it goes to places I don't go, but we have, I've biked to the East River Road Parkway, and I think there's a West River Road Parkway too. And so that's a nice bike and pedestrian path that's right along the Mississippi. So it's really beautiful actually, and I've just gone down there to run sometimes, and it's a really nice way to easily get to campus if biking is something that you enjoy.
I bike all the time in the summer, and did so until I think October or November. But Minneapolis has a really good, and St. Paul has really good bike system. And especially when you go down by Mayo, it's just buses, trains, which have their own lane, and then bikers, which is really nice.
And if you want to bike to public transportation, you can do that too. There's spots on the front of buses for bikes, and in the light rail cars, there's spots for bikes as well.
So do you guys have anything that surprised you about living in Minneapolis or St. Paul? Was the weather as bad as everyone said it is?
Yeah, I could talk about that. I mean, when I said that I was going to be moving to Minneapolis, I had all family and friends be like, oh, well, that's really cool, but how are you going to handle it? And honestly, I feel like I have handled the winter better here than I have in places like Chicago or Iowa, just because I think Minnesotans know how to do winter. So the plowing system is really great. All around campus, it's connected by tunnels and skyways. So if you don't want to go outside, you don't have to. And I think it's part of the culture here. So it's never, I mean, it gets cold. I'll be completely honest, but I think it's handled a lot better here. So that was definitely something that I was nervous about coming here. But I think, and Gabriella, who's off camera right now, came from California. So I think the winter was maybe a bit more of a shock to her than someone like me who's lived in the Midwest her whole life. But yeah, I think it was much more manageable than I expected.
Yeah, I kind of going off of that. I lived in Chicago, so I know winter too. But I think one thing that's really interesting is that Minnesotans love to go outside in the winter, and that really wasn't a thing in Chicago. You would like stay home and bundled. But yeah, there's so much to do, just like snowshoeing or cross-country skiing or just random things that you can just do around Minneapolis, and they make it really accessible and affordable to do so.
I guess something that surprised me was that I didn't feel like I was living in a city as much as I thought I would. I lived in Madison, Wisconsin before this, and all of my coworkers that had lived in the cities were like, oh, you're gonna love it. It's like Madison, but way better. And I think I've really found that because there is a lot of uniqueness to the cities, and it's not just one big like metro area. You can get to little small spots that just seem more like, you know, whatever your home would be. So I really enjoyed that.
Is that your favorite thing about your neighborhood or where you live, Kaila?
My favorite thing? Yeah, I do like that a lot. Like just yesterday, I took a walk. Well, not yesterday, it was raining. 2 days ago, it was beautiful outside. So I took a walk down the road, and I was able to go to this little shop and buy a skirt and some jewelry. And I was like, this is just so nice because it's a little local place. And I really enjoyed that about living in Madison, and I can still do that here. It's not a bunch of chain restaurants and stores all over the place. Even though we have them all in America, there's still lots of uniqueness here.
Yeah, I'd say my favorite thing about my neighborhood, and I think, I'm not sure if I already said this, but people say that Minneapolis is kind of a big city with a small town feel. And that's definitely how I feel about my neighborhood, is that it feels very residential and quiet. And then you walk a couple blocks and the downtown is right there. So I really like that kind of how you get a nice mix of everything. And I really like just being able to walk a short distance and be right on the Mississippi, and getting that really beautiful view of the skyline, and just how many people go outdoors. We had one of our first nice days a couple weeks ago, and all up and down the Mississippi was packed because everyone just goes outdoors and takes advantage of it.
Yeah, I think my favorite thing is, I think I mentioned before that I live on the intersection of 3 like small neighborhoods. So if I just walk a couple blocks in each direction, each of these small neighborhoods has a different feel and vibe to it. Como is completely different than Dinkytown, which is different from Marcy Homes in Northeast. So it's like being able to walk around and experience these different neighborhoods has really made me feel welcome here and almost feel like a Minnesotan.
I have another favorite that I thought of as you were joining. So I also really love the history of my neighborhood. I don't know how much other neighborhoods have that kind of, background to it, but the F. Scott Fitzgerald used to live on Summit Avenue, which I can walk to, and it's cool to see like where his flat was when he lived in St. Paul. And then if you keep going down Summit, you can see the James J. Hill House, which is one of the largest houses in the area, and there's a really cool background to like how he built up his business to be able to live there. And really close by is this huge cathedral, which is the biggest church I've ever seen in my life, and it is just so amazing to look at and to experience all that. And it's all in my neighborhood, and it's really cool to think about like what this was like when St. Paul and Minneapolis were starting to build up.
Cool. So it sounds like you have all mentioned your neighborhoods. So Summit and University, Dinkytown, Como, Marcy Homes, Northeast, Uptown. Are there any other neighborhoods that you would recommend that students look at, or any other neighborhoods where you have friends who live?
I know Prospect Park is pretty big. That's just a couple stops down the Green Line from the school. I know a lot of students live along there. I think just along the Green Line is a really good place. North Loop, I think a couple of students live there too.
I would say, I don't know if this is close to you, Kaila, but the St. Anthony Park neighborhood in St. Paul, it's kind of right on the border between Minneapolis and St. Paul. So that's a little farther away if you're looking for something like that.
Yeah, I've just noticed that kind of along the light rail, there's been a lot of stuff popping up over the past year or so in St. Paul, so that might be something to check out. I don't know if I mentioned it in this video or not yet, but to use online apps like Zillow, and you can see where the light rail is, and then you can see what apartments are along the light rail. And yeah, those have been popping up pretty nice. I would say going much further than where I live might make the commute too long. I have like a 20-minute light rail ride right now, and I think going much further into like downtown St. Paul might be a little bit too long, but it depends on what you're used to also.
How often are you guys on campus?
Well, this semester I'm only on campus twice a week, but it's kind of all day. But last semester I was here 4 times a week.
I'm on campus more than I'd like to be. It's mostly because I really don't have that many classes this semester. This is my last semester. So class-wise, not on campus a lot, but my lab is on campus, so that's where I am most of the time. So I would say a couple days a week, probably 3 to 4 days a week.
I really only need to be on campus twice a week, but depending on what else is going on and what I'm involved in, I might be here more often. My first year, I was probably on campus 4 or 5 days a week.
Okay, so one of the question submissions that we got in advance of our last video that I don't think was addressed in the last video was, what are some of the considerations for housing costs that not everyone might consider right away that you guys encountered, if any?
Make sure heat is included. That's a big one living in Minnesota. That's what a lot of people told me when I was moving here. So depending on what kind of heat the building has, so gas or electric, and just making sure that because if that's not included in the rent, that will go up astronomically in the winter time. So I think that is a really important cost to take into consideration. I know we've talked about parking. That really adds up if that's just an extra monthly fee. Pets. I don't have a pet. I wish I did. But that can also add to your rent if there's some sort of deposit there.
I would say take into consideration the summer, if you plan on living here in the summer. I wasn't here, but my fiance was, and he said our apartment was really hot because we were on the 3rd floor. Used to be an attic, so there was not a lot of good airflow. And I think actually we pay for heat. We have like baseboard electric heating, and the winter wasn't so bad, maybe because we were on the 3rd floor and heat rises, but the summer was really bad. We had an air conditioner and like a window unit, and that actually cost us more in the summer than it did in the winter. So just be aware of that too when you're choosing, like, you know, if do you want to live on the top floor where your heat's going to be rising in the summer and the winter, or do you want to live closer to the middle or the bottom? You know, just something else to think about when you're looking.
This isn't something I encountered in Chicago, and I don't know if you guys have it, but my apartment complex like required me to get renter's insurance. So I would like look into what your apartment requires you to pay for before you sign the lease, because I didn't know that until after.
How much is your renter's insurance?
My dad pays it.
Okay.
I don't know.
So I have it. I just bundled it with my car insurance, and it's really affordable. And I mean, it gives me some peace of mind in case something happens, that I know that, you know, my insurance will take care of it.
Yeah, I would also say, and this isn't really specific to the cities as far as costs go, but really just making sure that your landlord has really good reviews. So I came from Iowa City, which is a small college town, and there's a rental company that basically has a monopoly over all the properties, and they're horrendous. So that was something that was really important to me moving here, because that is going to be really dependent on whether or not you get your deposit back, which I think is a pretty big chunk of money.
Okay, so we don't have any other pre-submitted questions, and it looks like we haven't had anything on the chat. So do you guys have any other sort of last-minute pieces of advice for people looking to move here?
I think I might have said this on the first video, but then we were having technical difficulties. So again, I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, but I would really recommend coming in person and looking at properties. And again, not Twin Cities specific, but there were, I think I set up like about 5 showings, and I only liked one of them, but based on the pictures that they put up online, sometimes it makes them look a lot better than they actually are. So I know coming from out of state ahead of time is definitely a challenge. So I know some landlords can set up either Skype showings or FaceTime showings. So I think that's definitely something to consider.
I guess something that I want to add is that, I mean, I wasn't looking for a roommate, but I know a lot of people who were, and they found their roommates through the incoming students Facebook page. So I think that's a really good resource, because, I mean, you can look on Craigslist for roommates, but it can be really hard to, you know, gauge someone based on that versus, you know, someone who's admitted to the Masters of Public Health program, and you kind of have a better idea of what their values are.
I guess my suggestion is, I know that housing can be hard and stressful to navigate, and I think waiting and biding your time and not jumping on the first place you see is important, and making sure that you really do enjoy where you're going to stay and the surrounding area in your neighborhood, and making sure that you're comfortable there, because you probably will be living there for a year, and you don't want to stay somewhere that you don't like.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for all of your answers, panelists. If students have any other questions for other current students or you or our office in general, how can they contact us?
They can contact us by emailing the School of Public Health Student Services Office, which is sph-ask, at umn.edu.
Okay, thank you.
And thanks to Gabriella.